When Danny Boulder from Houston, Texas, went on a solo trip to Mexico, he found a stray kitten in bad shape. Against advice from the locals, he took it with him to the US with the intention of nursing it back to health. But a couple days later, 2 police officers showed up at his door, and it was quickly made clear to Danny that he had made a big mistake in doing so. He should have just left the kitten where he found it. One day, Danny was startled by a loud banging on his front door. When he looked out the window, he saw that there were 2 police officers knocking on his door. Well, it wasn't really knocking actually, as it was so loud that he thought they were smashing it in. Danny felt his heart drop. What did they want from him? The moment he opened up the door, the officers stepped into his house. Danny tried to stop them and demanded an explanation, but all they kept asking him was, "Where is it? Where is the cat?" Danny could not believe this was actually about the stray kitten he found while he was on vacation. But when one of the officers finally elaborated why they were looking for the cat, it all made sense to Danny. There was no way he could keep this animal. But what was wrong with this kitten? Should Danny have just left it behind when he found it? And why did the police have to get involved? Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. The moment Danny noticed the stray kitten, he immediately felt like he couldn't leave the poor creature behind. It kept meowing and purring. He felt his heart melt. But he was apparently the only one around who felt that way, as not a single passerby gave it any form of attention. Danny was on a solo vacation trip in Mexico at that time and was visiting a small village when he saw the kitten for the first time. It was covered in dirt from living on the streets and obviously very weak. It seemed that the kitten was an orphan, as it didn't look like his mother was nearby. The kitten kept following him for a while. When he walked towards a slightly busier street, he noticed it asked for more attention. His first thought was to take the kitten and bring it to a shelter. He went to approach the animal, but Danny was stopped in his tracks by shouts in Spanish from the locals. What were they saying? As Danny stood still now, and with the small kitten slowly approaching him, locals kept yelling to him not to pick up or touch the creature. At first, Danny wanted to ask why he shouldn't, but his Spanish wasn't good enough to ask it, let alone that he was able to understand the answer. With the kitten now clambering onto his boot, Danny decided for himself that these locals were probably just messing with him, as they all love to fool with the foreigners visiting their village. But then he thought that they might want to keep the kitten for themselves to use it as food for the livestock. He quickly, but carefully, picked up the animal and started making his way back to his car amid loud screams from the local residents. He could hear a diverse reaction from them, but couldn't really figure out what they were trying to say. Danny was able to understand that there were emotions ranging from angry to indifferent. Danny opened the car, put the kitten in an old sweater, and quickly drove off before any of the locals tried to stop him. He didn't understand why there was such a fuss for the kitten. All he thought about was to give the poor creature some food and drink and then take him to an animal shelter. Danny started driving without having a clue where he was going to end up. He was just in search of a bigger city where they have pet stores or at least sell cat food suitable for kittens. There was a little bit of a rush as he noticed the kitten was really hungry and was running out of energy. During this whole ordeal, Danny had fallen completely head over heels in love with this little creature. He had already forgotten about the yelling, and all the unclear warnings of the locals had been put to the back of his mind. He felt like it was his mission to give this beautiful creature another shot in life. Firstly, he wanted to drop the kitten off at a local shelter when he made his way back to his home in the United States. But as there were quite bad conditions in this part of Mexico, he had no idea what the quality of life that those would be able to offer was. Should he just keep it with him? Besides the seemingly bad conditions, he knew deep in his head that he couldn't say goodbye to the kitten even if he wanted to. He started to grow a bond with it already, and the only logical solution seemed to take it home with him. After the kitten had eaten and drank something, he seemed to revive a bit. It was about a day of continuous driving to get back home to Houston, Texas. The kitten, that starting to be very curious, was just exploring every nook and cranny of Danny's car on the way. Because he had nothing with him to put the kitten in, he decided he was not making an effort to hide the animal. He was going to cross the border soon. When Danny passed the checkpoint at the border, he immediately got some questions about the kitten. He told them that he was traveling the world with his cat and that there wasn't really more to tell about. The border guards whispered a few sentences to each other, but Danny got permission to keep on driving quite fast. As usual, it was really busy at the border. Danny thought they didn't want to spill too much time arguing about why he would bring a kitten back to the States, as there were probably many other things that required attention. Danny felt relieved that he was allowed to continue on his journey to bring his furry friend to what he expected to be her forever home. He always dreamt of having a pet cat, so this situation felt like his dream actually came true. However, after a while, it turned out that this wouldn't be the case. Danny has a heart of gold, which is further evidenced by the fact that he brings home a stray kitten from the streets of Mexico. He wasn't stupid either, as he did realize that a stray kitten could also carry numerous diseases. So he decided to make an appointment with the vet when he got home. Fortunately, Danny was able to go straight to the vet the next day. He was the first appointment of the day, so he had to get up early. Even though he was up early, he was still almost late because of the kitten that didn't let himself get caught. As the kitten kept running from him, Danny figured out in the meantime that he should give her a name. He decided that he was going to call her Missy from now on. Missy was way too curious for her own good, it seemed, as Danny constantly lost track of her. She was small enough to get into anywhere she wanted and did so wholeheartedly. Danny eventually found her under the sink just in time to make it to their appointment with the vet. But to his surprise, it seemed like Missy was now a lot less willing to be picked up compared to yesterday. He would discover why quite soon. Maybe it was because it had gained some strength and her survival instincts had come out more. But every time Danny tried to grab her, he was nearly bitten. He even seemed to hear her growl. Danny had never experienced that before. Then he thought of something that could help. With the help of some gloves, he managed to get her into the old cage of his previous cat, and they went to the vet. Danny just really hoped that this change in behavior was only temporary. He got a little tired of all the loud hissing. How is it possible that Missy was able to hiss so loudly? During the ride to the vet, it was clear that Missy was stressed and wanted to get out of the cage as soon as possible. She was hissing constantly and scratching the inside of the cage. Danny tried to calm her down, but when he moved his hand towards the cage, she started scratching him right away. After Danny arrived, the vet told him it would be better to sedate the kitten. In that way, he was able to investigate her in a safe way. As Danny told him that he picked the poor animal off the streets, the vet questioned how the weak kitten would react to injection. The vet judged that Missy looked very weak and malnourished, so an anesthetic could lead to death in such a case. With no other options, the vet decided to open the cage and get Missy out of the cage. But when he even got a little close, he was immediately scratched by her. What now? After discussing for a while, Danny and the vet decided it was best to take Missy home again. Danny was instructed to strengthen her over the next few days so that she would be fit enough to be put under sedation. The vet gave him a bag of special food that should speed up this process. This could also possibly help with the kitten's aggressive behavior. If an animal feels better, it often starts to behave better as well. Danny took the kitten home, but felt not really satisfied with the outcome. What was even worse was the fact that the vet was also planning on doing something else. The vet had not told Danny the exact truth as he was worried about the consequences of confronting him. He felt it wasn't up to him to tell him such things. That's why the vet grabbed his phone and called the police to inform them so that they could deal with this animal. The vet never intended to examine Missy. He already noticed that something was not right from the moment they walked through the door. He used Missy's weakness as an excuse to get Danny out of the clinic so he could call the police and let them sort this out. Danny had no idea of the vet's actual intentions, and he was just going to do as he was told. Bring Missy home and start giving her the special food so she strengthens up. On the way back, Missy finally calmed down. He was even able to pet her a little bit. It was at that moment that Danny thought everything would turn out fine. But would it? When they arrived back home, Danny poured the food he received from the vet into her bowl. It was in the line with his expectations that she would start eating like her life depended on it. But this wasn't what was happening. Actually, it was the exact opposite of Danny's expectations. She took a bite, spat it out, and starts hiding again. Danny figured out she might still be a bit stressed from the trip and just left her alone for a little bit, hoping she would come back to the food eventually. However, he began to recoil more and more from his decision to take the cat with him. It's really just been a hassle. Unknown to Danny, it was about to get a whole lot worse than the situation was. Danny was looking out of his window when he saw a police car with 2 officers pull up in front of his house. He immediately noticed that they didn't come to talk in peace. They were really looking for something. They rushed to his porch and began to pound on his door in haste. Danny got startled by how hard they were beating on his door. He still couldn't imagine why the police would come to his house, as he never did anything wrong. He rushed to the door to open up and give whoever was doing it peace of his mind. Danny opened the door and started to greet the police officers. But before he could say anything, he was pushed in, as it were, and the officers rushed in. Danny was stunned for a second and couldn't understand why all this was happening. When Danny realized that they just ran past him without giving a reason, he started to get mad. He ran back to his living room and screamed, "I demand an explanation!" While searching, one of the police officers yelled that they were looking for the monster. What did they mean by that? All Danny could think of was that they would come for Missy, but how could they ever know the cat was in his house? And worse, why did they call her a monster? Before he could either confirm or deny their allegations, Missy had already shown her curious face. "There it is!" one of the officers screamed. The police quickly went after her, chasing Missy through the house until they managed to corner her. Danny could only watch in shock horror as all of this was unfolding right in front of his eyes. He is still waiting for an answer as to why they are after his cat and started to lose his temper. The police officers were clearly prepared to chase and capture Missy as they wore thick gloves and had even brought a net and a cage, which was still standing in his doorway. Danny walked to his front door to close it and noticed an animal control van was driving up his porch. After a while, the police officers finally got hold of Missy. Missy obviously didn't agree and was raging in the net she was caught in. Well, at least any semblance of peace returns to the house. Now Danny wanted to know what the hell was going on. The officer told him that they did not really know why they were here either and that they were just following orders. All they knew was that the tip came in from the local vet and that Danny should probably call him for some answers. Wait, what? Did the vet call the cops? As the officers were putting Missy in the cage and taking her to the car, Danny rang the vet immediately. He got the assistant of the vet on the phone because the vet himself urgently had to go to another location. It was clear by her reaction that she had expected this call. The assistant of the vet explained that he had lied to Danny and hid the truth about his newfound companion out of fear that he would not take the news well. In his mind, it was better if the police dealt with this. Apparently, it was a very special situation. The vet had immediately spotted that Danny had not actually brought a sick kitten with him, but an endangered young Mexican bobcat, something he should not be in possession of under any circumstances. Danny had not told the vet he had found it in Mexico, so he had assumed Danny acquired the animal illegally. That is the main reason the vet wanted the police involved. Furthermore, the vet was afraid of getting into a conflict and decided it was better to report such illegal matters to the police. Later that day, Danny was called to give a statement about how he had come into the possession of the bobcat. Although his true story might have sounded a bit far-fetched, the police believe it. They decided to not press any further charges against him after doing a search of his house and not finding any evidence of illegal practices. The bobcat was handed to a rescue centre where it would be allowed to grow for a year or two, and then they would return the animal back to Mexico.